What's going on, everybody? It's Brett with Team Brannie, and we are going over the basics of the squat. So in this video, we're going to go over a few different key points, but in general, we're going to keep it pretty basic. We're not trying to get into too much detail of low bar versus high bar, or, short femurs versus long femurs, or anything like that. This is just for the general, I don't really know how to squat, I really don't know where to start, and I need help. So that's what we're going to help you with today. There are two main parts of the barbell squat. The first part is walking up to the bar and setting up, also shortened here as your setup. And the second portion is the actual squat. So I've decided to break down the setup into 5 main points. The first point being approaching the bar. An important thing to note is that you want to make sure the bar is low enough for you to take off the pegs of your squat rack without having to get up on your toes. It's always better for the bar to be a little low than for you to have to get up on your toes to unhook it from the rack. About mid-chest usually works, or just below the shoulder blades. Also keep in mind, when you begin to place weight on the bar, it's going to become harder to get the weight up as it pushes you down. Next, before you even get under the bar, you have to find a good hand position. If you're smaller or more narrow and you have good shoulder and spine mobility, you're going to want your hands in relatively close to your shoulders. For a larger lifter or someone who doesn't have very good shoulder mobility, a wider grip may be more necessary. The second point is the bar position on your back. Like I said, we're not going to get into too much detail whether you should squat low bar or high bar, but there is a difference between the two. In our video, we are going to go over the high bar here. That being said, the high bar position is set up at the base of the neck across the top of your traps. It's important to first squeeze your shoulder blades together to create a pillow, or also known as the shelf, for the bar to sit on to make you feel more comfortable. Make sure you do this before you set the bar across your back, and you have to make sure you stay tight the entire time. As I said before, we're not going to go into too much detail differentiating the low bar and high bar, but that is up to you over time. But like I said, this is just for beginners. Step 3 now would be the unracking of the bar. The unrack or the walkout of your bar can definitely either make or break your squat, since it's easy to lose tightness or your bar position if you're sloppy with your unracking. So typically we'll start with our feet under the bar, roughly about shoulder width apart. Some people like to begin their walkout with their feet being set in their squat position, and other people would prefer to start with a lunge position. The lunge is not effective as you're not very balanced and you're placing uneven load on your feet, so I would highly recommend taking the square stance and then walking out one step at a time. Typically the walkout takes place in a 3-step motion. You'll begin with your first step stepping back and out slightly, your second step getting close to that, and then your third step positioning your body ready for the squat. Get under the bar in your high bar position, adjust your grip lightly or slightly if need be, making sure you stay tight. Keep your chest up and try putting your elbows in your back pocket. Take a really big deep breath in, hold that breath in your core, not in your chest but in your stomach. Slightly bend your knees and squat the rack upwards to unrack the bar. Stay there for just a moment to make sure the weight is stabilized and not moving around on your shoulders. Holding that breath in, take one step back, and then your second step, staying tight. As you release your breath, begin to take your third step and stabilize yourself. From here, your fourth point is going to be your foot position as a whole. Once again, we're not trying to get into too much detail here, but you're going to want to point your toes slightly outwards just a little bit to give yourself more room to track your knees. You need to squat with your knees coming over your toes, and this becomes slightly easier with your toes pointed outwards. And the last position that we're going to gloss over here is going to be your neck and eye position. In olden times, or back in the 70s and 80s, it was always ideal to squat looking as high as possible, and you'll still see some people doing this as they shoot their head upwards and they hyperextend their neck to look as high as possible. Not recommended in the slightest. Starting with your eyes, you should keep your stare fixed at one solid point on the horizon, not the ceiling. Keeping your eyes straight ahead was going to keep your spine packed into a solid, tight position, and it's going to keep you more stable as you perform the squat. And now that you've unracked the bar, you've stabilized your feet, you've stabilized your trunk and torso, as well as your head and neck, you're now prepared and ready to begin the squat. Initiating the squat in its completion is about 3 steps long. The first step is to sit back and let your knees travel outwards. A big beginner mistake that I often see is someone squatting straight down, which typically causes poor mechanics and places too much stress on your knees. What you should be aiming for is to sit your hips back as you squat down with your knees at the same time, also known as breaking at the hips and breaking at the knees. This is going to allow you to keep the weight over your midfoot as you go through the movement. Think of it as sitting back into a chair. You wouldn't sit your hips exorbitantly backwards or break it with your knees exorbitantly forwards. You would bend both simultaneously to allow yourself to sit into the chair. As you go down into the squat, I don't want you to focus too much on hitting any sort of main depth. Ideally, you do want to squat below parallel, as it's going to activate the most muscle groups as well as recruit the most fibers possible to give you the best workout, but it's not necessary. Squatting anywhere close to depth should be fine as long as you are squatting with proper technique and squatting a weight that is proper for your abilities. If you've never squatted before and you're loading 400 pounds on the bar, that's probably not smart nor necessary, as you're not going to get a very good workout out of it. A good rule of thumb would be to squat slightly below parallel, which would put your hips at or below your knees. This not only targets those glute muscles more effectively, but it also prevents a shearing force being placed on your knees, which is typically caused by quarter or half squats. And as you squat into the hole, or as low as you possibly can go, you now must return to the standing position. Once you're at the bottom or in the hole, as I said, you're going to want to make sure you use your hip muscles as well as your glutes to fire yourself out of the hole to return to that top position. Make sure you activate your glute muscles and hamstrings by squeezing your butt when you start to press. This will not only allow you to squat more weight, but is also going to go a long way in keeping you safe. You also want to make sure that you're pressing your knees outwards and staying tight throughout your back to maintain stability throughout the entire movement. I've mentioned this several times, and it's very important that you do this. Allowing your knees to cave in is also known as knee valgus, and I'm sure you've seen some of those guys in the gym doing this. They squat weight that looks relatively heavy for them, and as they begin to stand up, their knees look like they're trying to touch as if they have to do the potty dance like they're 4 years old. This tends to happen as your body is placing you in a more stable position, or at least so it thinks. This is dangerous in the long run, as this can result in ACL tears as well as issues with your knees and hips in the long term. Prevent this by forcibly driving your knees outwards as you continue to stand up, and this will keep you in a safer position. And now that you've finished the squat and you've returned to a standing position, there are several options you have here. Continue with multiple reps in this set. Go ahead and reset yourself by taking another deep breath, keeping your feet in a nice stable tripoded position, and make sure that you keep your back and torso tight and begin another rep. If you've finished your set and you're going to re-rack the bar, finish your last rep and stand at the top position for just a moment to ensure the bar is stabilized. At this point in time, when you feel it is safe to return to the rack, take very small steps and walk yourself back into the rack, re-racking it, putting the bar down on the rack and letting it go. Congratulations, at this point you've just finished the squat and you are well on your way to enjoying one of the hardest exercises out there, but also one of the most satisfying, as you'll yield the most results. Keep squatting, and the more you squat, the better you'll get at it, the stronger you'll get, and the more weight you can move. Once again, the back squat's one of the best overall movements and strength builders that you can have. You work core stability, you work quads, glutes, hamstrings, and your entire posterior chain and back. Not very many exercises can do that, but it's very important to help protect your knees as long as you can by using proper techniques and squatting to the best of your abilities. Well guys, that just about wraps up our squat tutorial for the super basics. If you guys enjoyed this video, we really appreciate it if you can subscribe to the channel, as well as shoot us a thumbs up or leave any comments of things we could do better or things we should do more of. Annie and I are having a freaking blast putting these videos out. We very much enjoy putting these videos together, as we can't think of very much we'd rather do than work out and share our experiences with you guys. So like I said, if that's something you guys could get behind and you guys are enjoying watching us and hanging out with us, please feel free to subscribe to the channel, and leave a like on the video, or comment if there's anything you'd like us to do or anything you'd like us to not do. As always, we appreciate it. We hope you guys are having a good time, and we will see you in the next